They said the storm that night was one of the worst in years. The wind howled like a wounded thing, and rain slammed against the windows until it felt like the house itself was crying. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, tracing the rim of my coffee mug, waiting for Daniel to call. He always did before boarding a flight, but that night, the call never came. By midnight, my phone buzzed. Not with his voice, but with a notification from the news. Breaking. Flight 227 from Chicago to Seattle has gone down near Mount Rainier. I froze. The coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. Its echo, a cruel punctuation mark to the headline on the screen. Daniel. I called his number again and again, but it went straight to voicemail. His voice, calm, familiar, recorded, said, "Hey, it's Daniel. Leave a message." The next morning, officials confirmed the worst. There were no survivors. I remember the words like they were carved into me. "Your husband" was among the passengers. It didn't feel real. The world blurred. People came. Police, airline reps, reporters. Asking questions I couldn't answer. My parents flew in from Denver. Friends brought casseroles, flowers, condolences. None of it mattered. I just kept staring at the empty chair across from me. The one where he used to read the paper and tease me about overwatering the plants. At the funeral, they gave me a folded flag and an empty casket. They said his body was too damaged to recover. I didn't cry. I couldn't. It felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. The days became weeks, and weeks became months. I stopped sleeping, stopped painting. Our house, once filled with music and warmth, grew silent. Every sound echoed like a memory. 2 years passed that way. 2 long, heavy years. I learned to live around the grief. Like it was furniture, I couldn't move. Until one Tuesday morning, everything changed. I was driving back from the grocery store, the radio playing some old country song Daniel used to hum. When I stopped at a gas station off I-84, I grabbed a coffee, stepped outside, and that's when I saw him. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks. But no, that was him, Daniel. Same shoulders, same walk, same little habit of rubbing his neck when he laughed. He was at the next pump, fueling up a silver SUV. His hair was longer, darker, but it was him, and he wasn't alone. A young woman stood beside him, blonde, maybe early 30s, holding a cup of hot chocolate. And in the back seat of the SUV, a little girl, no older than 5, giggled as she played with a stuffed bunny. I froze. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I couldn't move. He looked happy, carefree, like a man who hadn't shattered another person's world. Then he leaned over, kissed the woman on the forehead, and laughed. That same warm, familiar laugh that used to fill our kitchen. The cup slipped from my hand, splattering hot coffee down my coat. But I didn't even feel it, because my husband, the man I buried, was standing 10 feet away, alive and smiling. I whispered his name, but no sound came out. When he turned toward me, for a second, our eyes almost met. My breath caught, but he didn't notice me. He just got into the SUV and drove away. I stood there long after the car disappeared down the highway. Rain began to fall again, soft and cold, like the day he died. But I wasn't crying. I was shaking, not with grief, but with something else, something sharper. Because if Daniel was alive, that meant the last 2 years of my life were built on a lie. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, staring into the rain, replaying every second at that gas station. It couldn't be real, and yet, I could still hear his laugh, see the curve of his jaw, the way his hand brushed his hair. By sunrise, I knew I had to be sure. The next morning, I drove back to that same gas station. I waited and waited. Hours passed. My coffee went cold. But then, just as I was about to give up, that silver SUV pulled in again. My heart stopped. He stepped out. Daniel, The woman was there again. The little girl too. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my fingers went numb. He had a beard now, and glasses. But it was him. The way he spoke, the small gestures. You can't fake those. When he looked down at the child, his whole face softened. I'd never seen that look on him before, and that hurt more than anything. Because it was love. I watched as they drove off. This time I followed. They headed east, out of Portland, past Gresham, then up into the mountains. The highway gave way to forest roads, the kind that look peaceful, but hide 1,000 secrets. After nearly 2 hours, they turned onto a dirt path that led to a secluded cabin. The house was beautiful. Log walls, a wraparound porch, flowers hanging from the eaves. It looked homey. I parked down the hill, out of sight, and just watched. He carried groceries in, while the woman, Laura, as I'd soon learn, called out something I couldn't hear. The little girl ran around with a stuffed rabbit, her laughter echoing through the trees. "Daddy!" she yelled. That word hit like a gunshot. I felt dizzy, sick, my vision blurred. How many times had I dreamed of hearing our own child say that word? How many nights had I lain awake, thinking what might have been? He wasn't dead. He'd left, by choice. That night, I tore through the house looking for anything. Any clue I'd missed. And in the attic, inside a box marked Daniel's files, I found it. His old laptop. The police had given it back after the investigation, saying it was too damaged to recover. They were wrong. After hours of failed passwords, one worked. Evelyn A4. My name, my birth year. It opened to chaos. Half-corrupted files, broken folders. But buried deep, I found bank statements, email drafts, and something that made my blood run cold. A document labeled David Miller. That was the name on the SUV registration. I opened it. Inside were scanned IDs, property deeds, and wire transfers to an offshore account, all under that alias. And then, the final blow, a marriage certificate. David Miller and Laura Miller. Date, 1 year before the crash. He'd married her while he was still married to me. He'd been living a double life long before his death. I didn't cry this time. I felt empty. I called the only person I trusted. Claire, my best friend and a private investigator. She'd helped me through the funeral, the estate, the endless paperwork. When she answered, her voice was groggy. "Evelyn, it's 2 a.m. What's wrong?" "He's alive," I said. There was silence. Then, "Who?" "Daniel." "Evelyn," she began carefully. "Grief does strange things to people. I saw him, Claire. I followed him. He's living in a cabin near Bend with another woman and a little girl. His name's David Miller." Another pause. Then, softly, "Okay, then we'll prove it." Over the next few days, we worked like detectives in a movie. Claire pulled DMV records. That silver SUV was registered under David Miller. She accessed databases, traced offshore accounts, and found a construction permit under the same alias. He hadn't just faked his death, he'd planned it, down to the last detail. The flight manifest from Flight 227 had his name, but not his body. Claire found reports that a passenger in his seat was unidentifiable, probably a body swap. Staged perfectly. Insurance fraud, bigamy, identity theft, and I had the proof. A week later, I went back to that cabin. I parked in the same spot, watching him through the trees. He was building a swing for the little girl. She laughed when he lifted her into it. He looked happy, and I realized something bitter. I wasn't watching a stranger. I was watching the man I'd loved, stripped of all the guilt that had once chained him. But I wasn't going to be his ghost anymore. That night, I made my choice. I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. First, I wanted to see his face when he saw me alive too. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The sky outside was painted grey, the kind of pale that feels like waiting. My hands trembled as I zipped up my jacket. Every part of me screamed not to go, but something stronger pulled me forward. The need for truth. I drove the 2 hours in silence. The radio stayed off, and the road was empty, cutting through the mist like a secret. My heart thudded louder with every mile. When I finally saw the cabin again, I parked behind the trees, my breath fogging against the window. There it was, Daniel's new world, his new life, his second chance. I watched him step onto the porch with a mug in hand, the kind of slow, easy morning he used to dream about. Only now, it wasn't me inside that house. I waited until Laura left in her car, probably taking the little girl to school. Then, I walked up the path and knocked. The sound of my knuckles against the wood was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. He opened the door, and time stopped. His eyes widened. His face drained of color. For a second, he didn't even breathe. "Evelyn," he whispered, like my name was a ghost curse. I stared at him, at the man who'd once been my everything, the man who'd died and somehow still stood before me. "Hi, Daniel," I said quietly. "You look good. Death suits you." He stumbled back, gripping the door frame. This isn't possible." "No." I stepped inside, my shoes wet from the rain. The air smelled like pine and coffee, and betrayal. "You made it possible. You made everything possible." He shut the door behind me, glancing out the window as if afraid someone might see. "Evelyn, please let me explain." "Explain what?" I snapped. "How you vanished. How you let me bury an empty coffin. How you stood there and watched me grieve while you built a new life with her." He ran a hand through his hair, that same old nervous habit. "You don't understand. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice," I said, my voice shaking. He looked at me then, really looked. His eyes were tired, lined with guilt, but I couldn't tell if it was real or just another performance. "I was drowning," he said. "The company was collapsing. I owed money to people I couldn't pay. Faking my death was the only way out. I thought you'd be better off without me. Better off." I laughed, sharp, bitter. "You think being a widow was better? Watching them lower an empty box into the ground. You didn't just kill your life, Daniel. You killed mine too." He flinched. For a moment, I saw something like shame flicker in his eyes. Then came the sound. Tires on gravel. Laura's car. Panic crossed his face. "You can't be here," he said quickly. "Please, just go. I'll explain everything later." "Why?" I asked. "Afraid she'll find out who you really are." The door opened. Laura stepped in, smiling, until she saw me. Her eyes darted from me to him. David, who is this?" The room went still. "Tell her," I said. He froze. "David," she repeated, her voice shaking now. I turned to her. "His name isn't David. It's Daniel Harper, my husband." She blinked, confused, then laughed nervously. That's impossible. He's my husband." "Look it up," I said. "You'll find a marriage certificate from 7 years ago. To me." Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, typing furiously. When she found it, when she saw it, her face crumpled. "Daniel," she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. "Tell me this isn't true." He tried to reach for her, but she stepped back, shaking her head. "You lied to me. You lied about everything. Laura, please, no." Her voice cracked. "You said your wife died. You said the plane crash took everything from you." He turned toward me, his voice breaking. "Evelyn, I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Didn't mean to," I said softly. "You planned every detail. The fake name, the accounts, the new life. You meant every second of it." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Laura backed toward the door. "I need to take my daughter," she said. Her voice was trembling, but her eyes were steady now. full of betrayal and disgust. "Don't come near us again." When she left, the silence was deafening. Daniel sank into a chair, his hands covering his face. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," he whispered. "But you did," I said. "You hurt everyone." He looked up, desperate. "Evelyn, you can go to the police, but please, not until I see her one last time. My daughter, she's innocent." Something in me wanted to scream, to rip the walls apart, to punish him for every night I'd spent crying into his memory. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the man I'd loved, hesitated. I turned toward the door. "You'll have plenty of time to think about her." From behind bars. That night, I called Claire. I told her everything. Within 2 days, she'd gathered the evidence, the bank transfers, the alias, the second marriage license. We handed it all to the authorities. It didn't take long. The news spread fast. Architect fakes death. Lives double life. Daniel Harper, once the man I'd loved, was arrested in front of that cabin while his daughter watched from the window. I didn't go. I couldn't. But when I saw his face on the news, gaunt, broken, afraid, I didn't feel triumph. I felt nothing, because when you spend years mourning someone who never really died, your heart learns not to feel it all. 6 months passed. The trial was over, the headlines faded, and the world had already moved on. But I hadn't. I thought seeing David, behind bars, would give me peace. It didn't. It just left a hollow space where anger used to live. Every few weeks, an envelope arrived from the county jail. I never opened the first few. I just dropped them into the kitchen drawer next to the old letters he used to send when we were dating. The ones that smelled like pine and coffee. The irony wasn't lost on me. Then one night, I couldn't sleep. The city outside was quiet, humming faintly through the window. I poured a glass of wine and opened the latest letter. "Evelyn, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please understand, I didn't fake my death to escape you. I did it to escape the man I'd become. You deserved better. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to let you decide what that meant." The rest was apologies, rambling confessions, an attempt at redemption that came far too late. When I finished, I folded the letter neatly and set it on fire. I watched the edges curl and blacken, the smoke rising like the ghosts I'd carried too long. That was the night I decided to leave everything behind. A month later, I sold the house. Every room held too many echoes. The laughter that wasn't real, the memories that now felt staged. I packed only what mattered: my paints, a box of journals, and one photograph of my younger self, smiling, carefree, untouched by betrayal. Then I drove west. I didn't know where I was going, just that it had to be far, someplace quiet, someplace honest. Eventually, I ended up in a little coastal town in Oregon, the kind of place where time moves slower, and nobody knows your story unless you tell it. I rented a small cottage near the cliffs. Mornings, I'd walk along the shore, the sea wind tangling my hair, salt clinging to my lips. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. I painted again. Not portraits or commissions, just feelings. Storms, waves, light, things that moved. Each canvas felt like a confession, each color a word I'd never said. One afternoon, while setting up my easel near the rocks, a man approached. He was older, maybe late 50s, wearing a fisherman's jacket and a kind smile. "Beautiful work," he said. "You from around here?" "No," I replied. "Just passing through." He nodded. "That's what I said 20 years ago. Been passing through ever since." We laughed. It was the first real laugh I'd had in years. His name was Thomas, a widower. He'd lost his wife to cancer a decade ago. We talked for hours about art, grief, forgiveness. He didn't ask about my past, and I didn't offer it. When he walked me back to the cottage, The sunset burned orange over the sea, and I realized something simple but profound. I wasn't broken anymore. I was becoming. Months slipped by. My art started selling in local galleries. People began calling me Eve Harper. A small lie, but one that belonged to me. One morning, I received a call from my lawyer. "Evelyn," she said softly, "Daniel passed away last night. Heart failure." For a long time, I said nothing. I just listened to the sound of the ocean outside, calm and endless. He'd died quietly, this time for real. No lies, no performances, just silence. I thanked her, hung up, and walked to the cliffs. The sky was grey, the kind that carries both sadness and peace. I stood there, breathing in the sea air, and whispered, "Goodbye," not to Daniel, to the life I once thought I needed, to the woman I used to be. Then I smiled, not out of joy, but freedom, because this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of the one I'd finally chosen. Epilogue. A year later, my first solo exhibition opened in Portland. It's titled, "After the Storm." Each painting told a piece of my journey. The fall, the fire, the rebirth. Critics called it raw, haunting and healing. But for me, it was simple. It was closure. As people drifted through the gallery, a familiar voice spoke beside me. Thomas smiled, holding 2 glasses of wine. To new beginnings, I nodded. To truth, we clinked glasses, and in that quiet golden moment, I realized sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. And maybe that's what freedom really means.